Drawing raindrops with Mr. G. Now, I know a lot of us, when we think about raindrops, we think about a specific shape. But if we look at all these beautiful raindrops on flowers and on leaves, every one of them has a different shape. Matter of fact, most of them don't look like the shape we think of at all when we think about raindrops. But one thing about raindrops is when we draw them, we have to make sure that we have a light part and we have a dark part, because light plays a really big part in how we observe and draw raindrops. Here is a demonstration. I've got a little light over some drops of water on a piece of plastic, and you can see how if we move the light around, there's a shadow on one end and then there's light on the other end. So this really kind of gives a really good demonstration on what light does. So continuing on from last year, if you remember last year, we talked about we need to be able to draw what we see. So we're going to observe this raindrop. It's got kind of a circular shape, not perfect. And then up on this side, there's the highlight. It's the light that's coming in. And on the bottom side, it's a shadow. So we're looking at the shape, we're looking at the highlight, and we're looking at the shadow. Those are kind of the three things that we can focus on. And we'll begin with a demonstration with pencil first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, best as I can, kind of a circular shape. And I'm looking at the raindrop. This particular one has a highlight on the top there. So I'm going to go up and make a little bit of a circle. And that'll be the highlight. The highlight just means where the light is pointing at the raindrop or at this drop of water. Now next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly shade around the highlight first. That makes it a lot easier not to mess it up later. So I'm just going to take it really lightly, going all the way around it. But I'm going to start up at the top, because if you look at the picture, there's kind of a dark shadow around the highlight. So I'm just going to do this kind of really lightly with my pencil. I like to make little tiny circular motions when I'm getting kind of close to this. And when I do the circular motion, it fills in the space a little bit better than with lines. So just do this really lightly when you're using your colored pencil is what you'll be doing. I'll fast forward this here so we can get to the next part. So I'm going to add another darker layer on top, going from dark to light, because on the bottom of it, it's going to be a little bit lighter. Now I'm going to add the shadow. If you look at the raindrop up there, it has a shadow. I'm going to try to draw that best as I can. And then once I get the shadow kind of outlined, then I'm going to fill it in, starting with right underneath the actual raindrop itself. You can see I'm pushing down harder on my pencil now. And I'll do the same thing. I'm pressing down harder on the top part, and then as I go down, I'm making it lighter and lighter and lighter, softer. Now I will take my blending stump, or you can use a Q-tip for that. And then I'm just going to go around and smooth that whole area out to make it look a little bit more realistic. And I'm going to take a little bit of a darker pencil. You can do this. This is something that you can try this at home. We'll be doing colored pencil today anyways. I just wanted to demonstrate this part of it as a kind of draw what you see example. I'm just going to take this Q-tip and kind of smooth things out a little bit more, maybe make it a little bit darker. You can see some graphite on the top right of the corner, that big black spot. I dipped into that as kind of a paintbrush. Now I'm just going to take my eraser. You can use the back of your pencil, or you can use your kneaded eraser, or if you have another eraser. I like this one just because it's a little bit more pointy. And then I'm also noticing up on the top right there that there's a highlight up there as well. So I'm going to copy that highlight. as best that I can. And that'll make those dark parts stand out a little bit better too. Also, the very bottom of the raindrop, if you notice that, it's also very light. So I took my eraser and I erased that bottom part so there was more of a contrast, more of a line in between the dark and the light. And there you go with the raindrop. So now we're going to talk about gradation. We've done this before, but I just wanted to remind you, going from darkest to light, all you have to do is push down a little bit harder first and then slowly move to the side and make it lighter. Take less pressure onto the pencil and it'll get lighter that way. And you can do it just the opposite way too. I know that you've practiced this before, going from light to dark. Another way of doing this is by using tiny little circles, just really lightly tiny little circles, and it fills in the space very nicely. And then you can go back over it and then push down a little bit harder, and you'll get that same kind of a gradation. This works great for spheres and things like that. And lastly, just going to show you layered gradation, which means you put a very nice light layer first, and then what you do is you go over it again. So each time that you go over it, just pushing down kind of hard now and then going a little bit lighter. We'll do that again. So the more that you go over it, the smoother it gets, and the more realistic you can get your drawing. All right, so let's try this with a real raindrop, just kind of from our head. I remember that we have to make the raindrop. We kind of make it whatever shape that we want to, because remember, there's all sorts of different raindrop shapes when we looked at those flowers and leaves. So I'm going to make a little highlight just with my mind. You notice that the highlights that we see in all the raindrops are really reflections of whatever the light source is, whether it's the sun, whether it's a window, whether it's a light bulb. Basically, that highlight is kind of a reflection of that light. So I've got the highlight now, just like we did the last one. Just going to fill it all in. I'm going to do this a little bit faster because you guys know the process. You've watched that process once already. And I noticed that on the bottom, there's usually some kind of light. So I'm going to leave that area a little bit lighter. I'm going to go over this one more time again to make it a little bit darker on the top. Just pressing down a little bit harder this time, and then getting lighter and lighter as I go down. Now I'm going to draw the shadow. I'm going to just guess on this shadow. Maybe make it about the shape of the raindrop. It can be a little bit off because that top of that raindrop, you never know exactly what it's looking like. And we'll just shade it in. And this time I'm starting a little bit harder, and then I'm going softer as I go down. Lighter as I go down. It's another gradation. From dark to light this time. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this kind of a background, just a colored background. All of this is done with just one colored pencil. And just as a reminder, we'll do this one more time. I'm just going to make another little shape. I'm just going to put a highlight in there. And I'm going to start kind of darker and go light, just like that. Then I'll add a shadow. Like that. Color around it. And there you have it. And this is also something that you should be able to do with crayons as well if you choose to do so.